Hello, folks. This is Greg Gilbert, host of Python's Paradise. And here we are, the dumping ground, as they call for films. August, and we're talking 1996 here. And of course, I don't do a top 5 of the month. I go into this, what are the 5 films that I most anticipated? And did they disappoint me? What was the result? And of course, 1996 was my first year for film criticism. And so, well, July was a great month for films. Let's look into August. What does August have? You know? And of course, the grade point, the grading system, A plus to F. If you're in the A's, excellent. You're in the B's, good. You're in the C's, diehard fan of actor / genre, what have you. If you're in the D's, pretty much don't see it. If you're in the F's, you're fucked. So, the 5 films I'm going to be focusing on for August 1996 are Matilda with Mara Wilson and Danny DeVito. Then we have Escape from L.A. with Kurt Russell and Peter Fonda. And we have Jack with Robin Williams and Jennifer Lopez. Then we have a very Brady sequel with Shelley Long and Gary Cole. And then finally, we have The Stupids with Tom Arnold and Jessica Lundy. And we're going to go from the worst to best on this. And here's the interesting thing. For in terms of worst, we got 2 Fs on this list here. I look at F a little bit differently. An F is either a film that's lacking everything, or maybe it might have one small complimentary thing, but not enough to give it a D-, because you could have more than one thing to compliment, but I think the worst of the 2 evils here is Escape from L.A. Because at least the other film I'm going to mention, at least, the production values were all right, Escape from L.A., you gotta remember, this was John Carpenter's sequel to Escape from New York, a film that I really enjoyed that was done for a lower budget. And that was a film that pretty much made Kurt Russell into an action star as Snake Plissken. I really like Escape from New York, and I was really anticipating Escape from L.A. And what a blunder. What a piece of shit this movie is. Easily one of the worst of the year. But even, the special effects for this much bigger budgeted film was horrific, look at the surfer scene alone is enough to convince you of that. But even worse than that, it's the same stupid story. The first one, you had a great grueling battle between Kurt Russell and professional wrestler Ox Baker, where they were battling each other with trash can lids and bats with spikes on them inside a ring. That was believable. This one here, you got Kurt Russell on a timer having to dribble a basketball and shoot hoops, which I found myself laughing at that. But it's same stupid story. You had a great cast that was greatly reduced. You had Peter Fonda in this, you had Steve Buscemi in this, you had, who else reduced their career with this shit? Cliff Robertson. It was absolute garbage. And, if I was to do a ranking on John Carpenter's films, between this and Ghosts of Mars, there might be another one in there, but John Carpenter has done some duds. He's done some great stuff, whether it be Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, They Live, Big Trouble in Little China. He's done some worthy stuff. But, you know, if you're going to do a sequel to something, yeah, you got to have the DNA of that first film, but try to do something a little different. And John Carpenter failed on all fronts here. Escape from LA gets an F. Watch Escape from New York instead, folks. Much better film. The other film that got an F is A Very Brady sequel. Only little bit of difference is A Very Brady sequel, at least the production values were fine. But production values being fine or not, that was about the only thing I could compliment. So it can't even hit a D-. But here's the thing. I was not, I grew up with the Brady Bunch. I remember that as a young boy back in the 70s. In fact, I think Marsha Brady, McCormick there, was one of my early crushes growing up. I remember watching the Brady Bunch because, you know, I was born in 1972, so that was one of those early shows I was engaged with. But here's the thing. I was not a big fan of either of the Brady Bunch movies. Now, the first Brady Bunch movie, I did see that in theaters in 1995. And we may cover it when I go back in the past and cover that year. That'll be a while. But here's the thing. The Brady Bunch movie had nothing going for it story-wise. They just selected a lot of high points in the series, in the sitcom, and they stuck it into one movie. I will say this. I did like Shelley Long as Mrs. Brady, and I liked Gary Cole as Mr. Brady. You know, and I thought the kids were all well cast. You know. Then you get to the sequel, and it's like, well, they have Michael McKean as a standard villain trying to sell houses in the neighborhood in the first one. This one here has Tim Madison as somebody that comes back into Mrs. Brady's life, and he had one good line in the film where they talk about not recognizing him, and he said, well, an elephant had stepped on his face. And that line delivery from Tim Madison was probably the only line I laughed at. But Michael McKean and Tim Madison, they're way too talented for this kind of stuff. But I went to this movie because I was a fan of the show growing up. The first Brady Bunch movie wasn't that good, but it was certainly more tolerable than this. And this whole thing about them going to the Hawaiian Islands or wherever it is they went, that doesn't happen until about the last 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. So great false advertising on that front. So A Very Brady sequel gets an F, but I'll keep it ahead of Escape from LA. I'd watch that over that. But given opportunity to do something else, I'd do something else. Okay, next up on the list, we get into more positive area. Because the next two films I'm going to talk about, they both got the same rating, a B-, which pretty much means they're entertaining. They're nothing great. They're not great art, and they're done by filmmakers that have done better. But I think the first one I'll talk about is Matilda. Mara Wilson, of course, everybody remembers from Mrs. Doubtfire, and she kind of stepped away from the industry, and I don't blame her. You know, it's probably better for her that she moved into something else. I didn't mind her. She was a nice little actress, and she embodies the role of Matilda really well. It's like a PG version of Carrie. She's this girl that knows telekinesis, and she goes to a public school where she ends up doing battle against the headmaster, played by Pam Ferris, who is like... She seems like she might have taught at the same school that Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger was working at before he was caught as a sex offender and burned. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman play her parents, who insist that she watch television as opposed to read a book. And I kind of don't mind that deal. I would have preferred to watch television growing up, although I don't mind reading. But I hated school, but Matilda wants to go to school. And she seems to fit in, and she's the head leader to fight against this principal or headmaster who force feeds his kid cake until he can't eat anymore, and locks another kid in the closet, and very abusive. Danny DeVito, as a director, does a lot of very dark humor. He's got a very dark sense of humor, and his films can be either hit or miss. He's, of course, did War of the Roses and Death to Smoochie and stuff like that. And Matilda, it looks on the surface like lighthearted fare, but it really isn't. Visually, it's stunning with the telekinetic stuff. But narratively, it's very weak. It's very predictable, and in some cases, it could give kids the wrong idea in its little rebellion against adults. Although bowing down to somebody that's as abusive as the Ferris character in this movie, I kind of get them rebelling. But in the end, Matilda gets a B minus. It's serviceable, But if you're going to watch it with your kids, watch it with them and ask the right questions. The other film that I want to talk about that's also got a B minus, and done by a director I have great respect for, and that's Jack. Jack got a lot of negative reviews when it came out, and I don't know if I really understand it. It was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who was just big in the 70s. He did The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation with Gene Hackman, and my favorite all-time war movie, Apocalypse Now, with Martin Sheen and Marlon Brando. Then he kind of phased out a little bit, because Apocalypse Now just took so much out of him filming that, and he did The Outsiders, Peggy Sue Got Married, and Rumblefish and stuff like that. So his films kind of got smaller in scale, but that's not to say he did bad films. He did Bram Stoker's Dracula as well, I believe. Jack is considered a misstep. I don't quite see it that way. Of course, it's about a boy named Jack who ages 10 years for every year he's on Earth. And I forget the backstory to this, but he grows to look like Robin Williams. Now, Robin Williams was the perfect one to play this part, because he's like a grown kid himself, God rest his soul. I've always loved Robin Williams. And of course, he's homeschooled by his parents, played by Diane Lane and is it Brian Kerwin, I think, his father. And they love their kid, but when he wants to go to a public school to interact with other kids, they see that as being a problem. And why not, because, he's a 10-year-old in a 40-year-old body. So that poses some issues, especially when he asks his teacher, played by Jennifer Lawrence, to the prom. Hindsight, I can't see that being a bad thing. Of course, he is a 10-year-old in a 40-year-old body, but if you're 40 years old, go for it. He's Jennifer Lopez. And they all seem to care for him, but this is coming to an area where medically he's going to have a heart attack or something's going to go wrong. And sure enough, that does happen. Bill Cosby, of all people, appears in this movie, kind of giving William some therapeutic advice as a doctor. Jack definitely has some narrative problems. The screenplay is kind of on one level. It goes in places you know it's going to go. And of course, the other kids get Robin Williams, who looks like an adult, to get them issues of Playboy so they can watch in the treehouse. And he does this because he's getting accepted, you know. And of course, he goes to a bar where somebody picks a fight with him. Fran Drescher is in this movie as one of the mothers of one of the kids, and it's kind of nice seeing her and Robin Williams play off each other. But this is a really sad, depressing movie, and not quite as funny as the advertisements want you to believe it is. But it does teach you a valuable lesson about engaging in life and valuing not just your life, but the lives of those around you, and appreciate what you have. I give Jack a B-. If you're a big Robin Williams fan, definitely check it out, because he is the best thing about it and elevates it beyond what it might have been without him. So a B- for Jack. Now this is going to come to a surprise to most people, but the best film that I'm going to talk about out of these 5 is a film that was up for Razzies. In fact, I think its lead actor won a Razzie for this and 2 other films. And yet, I really like this film. It's called The Stupids. Tom Arnold was in 3 movies in 1996. The worst of those was Carpool, and that was the only one of the 3 that came to our theaters. The better 2 were Big Bully and The Stupids. I think Big Bully certainly had its flaws, but it had a lot to say as well. Carpool had nothing to say. It just sucked ass. But The Stupids, I never got all the hate for it. And to be frank, it didn't start out that way for me, because I remember when I first saw the movie, when I rented it on video, I hated it. But just a matter of recency, I gave it a rewatch, because I was like, you know what? It's John Landis as the director. He made Animal House, The Blues Brothers, Trading Places, An American Werewolf in London, Coming to America. I mean, this guy's got more hits than misses. So I gave it another shot, and I come away really with a great deal of insight of what the movie was about. Tom Arnold and Jessica Lundy play a couple parents. They've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And there's so much absurdity in this film, I found myself chuckling a lot. I mean, the garbage truck comes, and Arnold and Lundy are wondering what's up with this truck coming and stealing their garbage. And of course, it's nothing other than them picking up the trash. So Arnold dons a pair of rollerblades and goes after the garbage truck, and accidentally uncovers a conspiracy. You got Mark Metcalf, who was Niedermeyer in Animal House. It's funny, he's playing a Niedermeyer in this film too. No surprise there. And anyway, Jessica Lundy tries to find Tom Arnold, and one of the things I loved about this movie is that Jessica Lundy, it's not just Tom Arnold. Jessica Lundy is allowed to be funny. She's allowed to be goofy, and she does so with what she considers a disguise, but it's really outlandishly standoutish, look at me costume with the big hat and the frilly colors. And there's nothing about it that looks undercover, but yet she does it. And I love that about Jessica Lundy. She was allowed to be funny. The film scored points there. The 2 kids, the boy and the girl, also were funny. They're probably smarter than their parents, but that's not saying much. But yet they were allowed to be absurd. They were allowed to be funny as well. How this family survives, I don't know, don't care. All I know is I had a lot of laughs watching The Stupids. And I thought it was a much more clever film than I thought it was going to be on my second time watching it. And I mean, it's not great. There's some performances in it that are very flat. But I thought the main characters were really good in this film. So I can understand giving Tom Arnold a Razzie for Carpool, but for Big Bully and the Stupids, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Um, some of you are probably gonna thumb your nose at me for this, and that's fine. Go for it. Try to keep the comments professional and not mean spirited. But I give the Stupids an A minus. Yeah, I thought it was a lot more intelligent and a lot better film than it had any right to be. So that's my basic rundown of 1996. The Stupids gets an A minus. Jack and Matilda get a B minus. And a Very Brady sequel, and especially Escape from LA, they're an F apiece. So I shall see you back here for September 1996 with my outlook on 5 films from that month. But in the meantime, don't get stupid. Get smart. Watch Stupids.